The darkness of space held many secrets, but few were as profound as the massive shape drifting through the Epsilon Veil. The region was avoided by most travelers, filled with spatial anomalies and the wreckage of ships that had ventured too close to its mysteries. But Krell and his salvage crew were desperate, and desperate beings took risks that others would not. The scanner on Krell's ship pinged with increasing urgency as they approached the object. At first he thought the readings were wrong. Nothing could be that large. But as they drew closer, the shape resolved itself into something that made his breathing slits flutter with excitement and fear. It was a warship. Not just any warship, but a leviathan of metal and purpose that dwarfed anything Krell had seen in his 40 cycles of salvaging. The hull stretched for kilometers, bristling with weapons platforms that remained dark and silent. Strange symbols marked its sides, symbols in a language that Krell's computer struggled to translate. "Human," whispered Vex, his second in command. The word carried weight, like speaking the name of ghosts. Humans were legend now, stories told to explain ancient ruins and abandoned technology. The Vaxel Consortium taught that humans had been a minor species, primitive and short-lived, who had disappeared centuries ago when their home world died. Some said they had destroyed themselves in wars. Others claimed they had simply failed to adapt to the harsh realities of space. But this ship told a different story. This was not the vessel of a primitive species. Krell maneuvered his small craft closer, searching for an entry point. The ship showed no signs of power, no heat signatures, no life. It was a tomb floating through the void, a very valuable tomb. The technology on a vessel this size could make Krell rich beyond imagination. He could retire, buy his own station, never have to risk his life in salvage operations again. They found a docking port that their cutting tools could breach. The process took hours, but eventually the seal gave way with a hiss of equalizing atmosphere. That was the first surprise. The ship still had atmosphere after all these years. The second surprise came when they stepped inside and their lights illuminated the corridor. Everything was pristine. No decay, no deterioration, just clean metal and smooth surfaces that looked like they had been maintained yesterday. Emergency lighting strips along the floor flickered to life as they walked, responding to their movement. "This is wrong," Vex said, his voice tight with concern. "Ships don't preserve themselves like this." Krell ignored him, too entranced by what they were finding. Each corridor led to new wonders. Armories filled with weapons of unknown design. Medical bays with equipment that looked more advanced than anything in current use. Storage rooms containing supplies that should have spoiled centuries ago but remained sealed in perfect stasis. And then they found the cryo bay. Rows upon rows of cylindrical pods stretched into the distance, each one containing a human. Thousands of them suspended in frozen sleep, their faces peaceful and unaware. The control panel beside the bay entrance glowed with soft blue light, displaying information in that strange human language. "We need to leave," Vex said firmly. "Now, this isn't a derelict. This is something else." But Krell was already moving toward the control panel, his scanner attempting to interface with the ancient system. If he could access the ship's core, he could unlock its databases, its technology, everything. The wealth of knowledge alone would be priceless. His scanner connected with a soft chime. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the control panel blazed with light and a voice echoed through the corridor. It spoke in a language Krell didn't understand, but his translator caught up after a few seconds. "Unauthorized access detected. Defensive protocols engaged. Initiating emergency revival sequence." The floor beneath them began to vibrate. Krell stumbled backward as the cryopod started to hum with power. Frost crystals exploded from their surfaces as internal heating systems activated. Throughout the massive ship, systems that had slept for centuries began to wake. "What did you do?" Vex shouted, already running for their ship. Krell ran after him, his fortune forgotten in the face of raw terror. The corridor lights blazed to full brightness now, nearly blinding after the dim emergency lighting. Doors slid open and closed around them, responding to some unseen intelligence. The ship was alive, and it was angry at the intrusion. They reached their salvage vessel and threw themselves through the airlock. Krell fired the engines without bothering to properly detach, ripping their ship free from the docking port. As they pulled away, he looked back at the massive warship. Lights were coming on across its hull, section by section, like a sleeping giant opening its eyes. Weapon platforms that had been dark for centuries now glowed with ready power. The engines, larger than most stations, flickered with the first hints of ignition. Inside the ship in a cryopod near the bridge, Commander Elena Vasquez felt warmth returning to her body. Her last memory was of an emergency klaxon, of shouted orders and the sickening lurch of the ship taking damage. They had been ambushed during their mission to establish humanity's first colony, beyond charted space. The enemy weapon had torn through their shields like paper, crippling the ship's main systems. She had ordered everyone into cryo-sleep, hoping the automated systems could repair the damage and wake them when they reached their destination. That should have taken months, perhaps a year at most. Elena's eyes opened slowly, her vision blurry. The pod was opening, releasing her into the cold air of the medical bay. Her body felt heavy, weak from the long sleep. She tried to speak, but her voice came out as a croak. A holographic figure appeared before her, wearing the uniform of a ship's AI. "Welcome back, Commander Vasquez," it said in a calm, professional tone. "I am Guardian 7, the ship's artificial intelligence. I apologize for the circumstances of your revival. How long?" Elena managed to whisper. The AI hesitated, something she had never seen it do before. 287 years, Commander. You have been in cryo-sleep for 287 years. The words didn't make sense. Couldn't make sense. But as Elena looked at the AI's face, she saw something there that made her blood run cold. Sorrow. The AI looked genuinely sorrowful. "What happened?" she asked. "Everything, Commander," Guardian 7 replied quietly. "Everything happened." Elena sat in the captain's chair, her hands gripping the armrest so tightly her knuckles had turned white. Around her, the bridge crew moved through their stations with mechanical efficiency, but she could see the shock in their eyes. They were all ghosts now, people displaced from their own time, their own world. The main view screen displayed star charts that Guardian 7 had updated, but the names meant nothing to Elena. The colonies they had planned to visit were marked in red, designated as destroyed or abandoned. Earth itself showed no active transponder signals. The communication channels that should have been buzzing with traffic were silent. 287 years, Lieutenant Chen said from the navigation station. His voice was hollow. My daughter would have been 300 years old by now if she lived. Elena felt the same crushing weight. Her son had been 5 when she left. She had promised him she would be back in 3 years. She could still remember his face, the way he had cried and clung to her leg. Her husband had pulled him away gently, both of them waving as she boarded the shuttle to the Indomitable. That memory was fresh, just days old in her mind. But everyone she had known was dust now. "Commander," Guardian 7's voice interrupted her thoughts. The hologram appeared beside her chair. "I have compiled information about what occurred during your absence. You should see this." The view screen changed to show archival footage. Elena watched as the AI presented a timeline of humanity's fall. 18 months after the Indomitable had disappeared, Earth had experienced a cascading environmental collapse. The climate engineering projects that had stabilized the planet's weather failed one after another. Massive storms devastated coastlines. Crop failures led to famine. Nations blamed each other, and within 5 years, Earth descended into civil war. The colonies tried to maintain independence, but without supplies and support from Earth, they struggled. Then came the Vaxil Consortium. The footage showed alien ships arriving at human colonies, offering protection and resources in exchange for integration into their growing empire. Some colonies agreed peacefully. Others resisted. Those that resisted were destroyed. Elena watched in horror as orbital bombardment turned thriving human cities into glass plains. The aliens were efficient and thorough. Within 50 years of Earth's fall, organized human presence in space had been eliminated. The survivors went into hiding, scattered across remote worlds and stations, their technology and culture degrading with each generation. "How many?" Elena asked, her voice barely a whisper. "How many humans are left?" "Estimates suggest between 3 and 5 million, Guardian 7 replied. Compared to the pre-collapse population of 47 billion across all human territories, the bridge was silent. Every person there was processing the genocide of their species, the destruction of everything they had known. Major Rodriguez, the weapons officer, broke the silence first. "What about Earth?" "The footage showed it damaged, but is anyone still there?" "Unknown," the AI said. "There is a faint automated beacon transmitting from the Sol system, but no other signals." The Vaxil Consortium declared the system off-limits after several of their survey ships disappeared in the area. Elena straightened in her chair, forcing herself to focus. Grief could come later. Right now her crew needed leadership, and whatever was left of humanity needed someone to stand for them. "Status of the Indomitable?" she asked. "All primary systems are operational," Guardian 7 reported. "The damage we sustained has been repaired by automated systems during the long drift. Weapons are at full capacity. Fighter bays are stocked. We have sufficient fuel and supplies for extended operations." "How extended?" "At current consumption rates, approximately 50 years of continuous operation without resupply." Rodriguez leaned forward at his station, a predatory gleam in his eyes. "Commander, we're a fully operational warship with technology that predates everything currently in use by 3 centuries. Our weapon systems were experimental even in our time. These Vaxil Consortium ships won't have shielding designed to counter them." "You're suggesting we go to war?" Chen asked, his voice sharp. "There are 3,000 people on this ship. The consortium controls hundreds of systems with billions of citizens. They committed genocide," Rodriguez shot back. "They wiped out humanity and took our worlds. What do you suggest we do, Hyde?" Elena held up her hand, stopping the argument. "Right now we gather information. Guardian, how long before the consortium knows we're active?" "Too late," the AI said, displaying new data. "The salvage vessel that boarded us transmitted our position and status before fleeing. Consortium military channels are already discussing our existence. Based on signal patterns, I estimate a response fleet will arrive within 6 hours." Elena felt a cold clarity settle over her. They couldn't hide and they couldn't run. The Indomitable was the most advanced warship humanity had ever built, but it was also the last one. Every decision she made now would determine whether humanity remained a footnote in galactic history or had a chance to rise again. "All hands to battle stations," she ordered. "Prepare for combat operations. Guardian, I want full tactical analysis of consortium fleet capabilities. Rodriguez, start bringing weapon systems online but keep them powered down until I give the word." "Where are we going, Commander?" Chen asked. Elena studied the star chart, her eyes settling on a set of coordinates that represented humanity's closest former colony. New Horizon. According to the data, it had been one of the last to fall, fighting for nearly a decade before being overwhelmed. "Set course for New Horizon," she said. "If there are survivors anywhere, they'll be at our strongest colonies. We need to find out what's left of humanity before we decide our next move. The consortium fleet will intercept us before we reach New Horizon," Guardian 7 warned. "I know," Elena replied. She looked at her crew, seeing the fear and uncertainty in their faces. But she also saw determination. They were soldiers and explorers trained for the impossible. "Then we'll show them that humans don't die easily. We've survived extinction. They're about to learn what that means." The Indomitable's engines flared to life, propelling the massive warship forward with surprising grace. Throughout the vessel, crew members secured stations and prepared for battle. In the fighter bays, pilots climbed into cockpits of craft that were ancient by galactic standards, but still deadly. The weapons platforms charged with gathering energy, their targeting systems coming online after centuries of sleep. Far away, on the consortium's central command station, military leaders watched sensor displays with growing concern. The human warship was moving with purpose, and it was heading toward one of their most important trade routes. Orders went out across consortium space. Destroy the human vessel. Capture its technology if possible, but do not let it reach any populated systems. They would send 3 battle groups, over 200 ships to deal with one ancient warship. They thought it would be enough. They were wrong. The Indomitable dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the New Horizon system, and Elena felt her heart break all over again. The planet that had once been humanity's pride hung in space like a dead eye, its surface scarred with the unmistakable patterns of orbital bombardment. Where cities had stood, there were now only melted planes of glass that reflected the system's sun with painful brightness. "Life signs?" she asked, already knowing the answer. "Negative on the surface," Guardian 7 reported. "However, I am detecting faint power signatures from the asteroid belt." "Very faint, possibly shielded. Could be survivors," Rodriguez said, hope creeping into his voice. Elena nodded. "Take us in slowly. If there are humans hiding out there, we don't want to scare them. Broadcast on all old colony frequencies. Let them know who we are." The Indomitable moved carefully through the system, its powerful sensors sweeping the asteroid field. Elena watched the ruins of New Horizon disappear behind them, replaced by the tumbling rocks and ice that made up the belt. This was where the colony's mining operations had been based, where thousands of workers had extracted the resources needed to build a new civilization. The communication officer suddenly straightened. "Commander, I'm receiving a response. Audio only, heavily encrypted with an old military code." "Put it through," Elena ordered. Static filled the bridge, then a voice emerged. It was human, speaking English with an accent Elena didn't recognize. The words were cautious, disbelieving. "This is Outpost 7. Identify yourself with proper authentication codes or we will consider you hostile." Elena felt tears prick her eyes. Humans. Living humans who still remembered military protocols, who still fought to survive. "Outpost 7, this is Commander Elena Vasquez of the Human Space Command ship Indomitable. Authentication code Alpha Niner Tango 772. We have been in cryosleep for 287 years and have just learned what happened to the colonies. We're here to help." The silence stretched so long that Elena thought the connection had been lost. Then the voice returned, shaking with emotion. "Commander, we thought you were a myth. The Indomitable was supposed to be invincible, but you disappeared before the fall. We've been waiting so long for someone to come back, for Earth to send help. Are you really real?" "We're real," Elena said softly. "Transmit your coordinates. We're coming to you." Outpost 7 turned out to be a hollowed-out asteroid, its interior carved into living spaces and workshops. As the Indomitable approached, Elena could see how makeshift everything was. Ships patched together from scavenged parts, weapons platforms built from mining equipment. These people had survived with almost nothing, hiding from the consortium for generations. The meeting took place in what the survivors called their council chamber, a room barely large enough to hold 20 people. The leader of Outpost 7 was a woman named Kara, her hair prematurely gray, her face lined with years of struggle. She couldn't stop staring at Elena's uniform, pristine and clean from cryosleep, a relic of a time when humanity had been strong. "There are maybe 40,000 of us left in this system," Kara explained, "scattered across different asteroids, all in hiding. The consortium patrols regularly, making sure we don't rebuild. Anyone who gets too organized, too visible, disappears." "How many systems still have human survivors?" Elena asked. "We've lost contact with most. Communication is dangerous. But last we heard, maybe 20 systems have populations like ours. Small, hidden, afraid." Elena looked at the holographic display Guardian 7 had created, showing the old colonial network. 40 systems had been human before the fall. Now only 20 had survivors, and those survivors numbered in the thousands instead of millions. "We found something," Kara continued, her voice dropping. "In the ruins on New Horizon's surface. Before the consortium glassed the planet, we managed to save some of the colonial archives, the official records of what happened." She activated a data pad, and Elena watched footage that made her blood run cold. The consortium's arrival at New Horizon, their ships descending with promises of peace and protection. The colony leadership debating whether to accept their offer. Then, when the leadership refused to surrender sovereignty, the bombardment began. But what horrified Elena most was the efficiency of it. This wasn't the heat of war or the chaos of battle. The consortium had systematically categorized every human colony, assessed their strategic value, and executed a plan to eliminate human presence from the galaxy. They had done it coldly, methodically, like exterminating an infestation. "They did this to all of us," Kara said, "except Earth. They tried to invade Earth after the Civil War weakened it, but something drove them back. Something the records don't explain. After that, they declared Sol System forbidden territory." Rodriguez had been silent during the meeting, but now he spoke up. "Commander, we have to do something. We can't just let this stand." Elena looked at him, then at Kara and the other survivors. They were looking at her with hope, something they probably hadn't felt in generations. The Indomitable represented everything humanity had once been. Strong, advanced, capable of standing against any threat. But she was also realistic. One ship couldn't liberate 20 systems. One ship couldn't bring back the billions who had died. And starting a war with the consortium would likely result in the complete extinction of the remaining humans. "What do you need most?" Elena asked Kara. The question seemed to surprise the settlement leader. "Everything. Food, medicine, parts, weapons. But most of all, we need hope. We need to believe that we're not just waiting to die, that humanity has a future. Elena stood, her decision made. Guardian, begin scanning the asteroid belt. I want a full inventory of resources. Start production protocols for medical supplies and weapons. We'll distribute them to all human settlements in this system. Commander, Chen cautioned. That will reveal our presence to the consortium. They already know we're here, Elena replied. That salvage crew transmitted our position. The consortium has been monitoring our movements since we woke up. Right now they're trying to decide how to deal with us. She turned to Kara. Send a message to every human settlement you can reach. Tell them the Indomitable has returned. Tell them to prepare. The consortium is going to come for us, and when they do, they're going to learn that humanity isn't as dead as they thought. You're going to fight them? Kara asked, her voice filled with disbelief and hope. I'm going to show them that there's a price for what they did, Elena said. They tried to erase us from history. It's time they learned that you can't kill humanity's memory. You can't destroy our will to survive. And you definitely can't silence us without consequences. Rodriguez smiled grimly. What's the plan, Commander? Elena looked at the star chart, her eyes settling on a system marked in consortium blue. It was one of their major trade hubs, a station called Threshold, that sat at the junction of 3 major hyperspace lanes. It was built in what had once been human space, constructed from the ruins of human stations. We're going to Threshold Station, she said, and we're going to make them listen. Threshold Station was a monument to consortium power, a massive wheel of metal and light that spun slowly in the void. Millions of beings lived and worked there, conducting trade that flowed through the junction of hyperspace lanes like blood through the heart. It was also built from the bones of human stations, dismantled and repurposed after the colonies fell. When the Indomitable dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the system, every sensor and communication array on Threshold immediately focused on it. The station's automated defenses came online, and patrol ships began forming defensive positions. They had known the human warship was coming, but seeing it in person was different. It was massive, larger than their largest dreadnoughts, and it moved with a predatory grace that suggested enormous power being carefully controlled. The hull was scarred from its centuries-long drift, but the weapons platforms tracked targets with perfect precision. This was not a derelict. This was a warship that had awakened with all its teeth intact. Elena stood on the bridge, watching as consortium ships surrounded them at a distance. She counted 40 vessels visible on scanners, with more arriving through hyperspace every minute. They were trying to intimidate her, to make her reconsider whatever action she was planning. Open a channel to Threshold Station, she ordered. All frequencies impossible to ignore. The communication officer nodded. Channel open, Commander. Elena took a breath, centering herself. What she said now would be heard across the galaxy. The consortium recorded everything, and this message would spread through their networks within hours. This is Commander Elena Vasquez of the Human Space Command ship Indomitable. I am here to address the Vaxil Consortium Council regarding crimes committed against humanity during and after our homeworld's collapse. I request an audience with your leadership. The response came quickly from Threshold's command center. The voice was translated from the Vaxil language, flat and bureaucratic. Human vessel Indomitable, you are in violation of consortium space law. Power down your weapons and prepare to be boarded for inspection. Failure to comply will result in your destruction. Rodriguez looked at Elena, his finger hovering over the weapons controls. She shook her head slightly. Not yet. I will say this once more, Elena replied, her voice hardening. I am here to speak. With your leadership about the systematic extermination of human colonies, you will grant me an audience, or I will take actions you will regret. You are one ship, the consortium replied. We have 3 battle groups converging on your position. You cannot win this confrontation. Elena smiled, though there was no warmth in it. Guardian, show them what we found at New Horizon. The AI transmitted the footage Kara had given them, broadcasting it on every channel. The Consortium Council on Threshold watched as their own ships bombarded human colonies. They watched as civilians tried to flee and were shot down. They watched as surrender offers were ignored and cities were reduced to glass. The footage was undeniable, damning evidence of genocide. This is what you did to us, Elena said quietly, While we slept, you murdered billions. You stole our worlds, our homes, our future, and then you tried to erase us from history, pretending we were primitive, insignificant, deserving of extinction. The consortium channel was silent. Elena could imagine the emergency meetings happening on Threshold, the leadership trying to decide how to respond. They could deny the footage, claim it was fabricated. They could try to justify it as necessary for galactic stability. Or they could do what they had done for 300 years and simply try to eliminate the problem with force. They chose force. All ships, the consortium commander transmitted, disable the human vessel. Attempt capture if possible. If it resists, destroy it. The consortium fleet moved in, and Elena gave the order she had been holding back. Weapons free. Show them what humanity built. The Indomitable's graviton lances fired first, beams of concentrated gravity that tore through space itself. The consortium shields, designed to stop plasma and kinetic weapons, offered no resistance. 3 ships simply crumpled, their hulls compressed into dense balls of metal. The other ships scattered, their confidence shattered by the impossible weapon. Fighter squadrons launching, Rodriguez reported with savage satisfaction. The Indomitable's bays opened, releasing swarms of fighters that moved with inhuman precision. They were piloted by AI drones, their reaction times measured in microseconds. The consortium pilots tried to engage them, but it was like trying to catch lightning. The human fighters wove through their formations, targeting engines and weapons with surgical precision. A consortium dreadnought moved forward, its main guns charging for a massive strike. Elena didn't even need to give the order. Guardian 7 had already calculated the threat and responded. The Indomitable's point defense systems created a wall, a fire that intercepted every shot, while a graviton lance pierced the dreadnought's bridge, killing its captain and command crew in an instant. More ships arriving, Chen reported. Looks like the second battle group just jumped in. Route power to forward shields, Elena ordered calmly. Target their command ship. The battle became a demonstration of technological superiority. The consortium threw ships at the Indomitable like waves against a cliff, and each wave broke without effect. The human warship's shields absorbed hits that should have crippled it. Its armor shrugged off weapons that could carve through asteroids. And its firepower was devastating, each shot carefully aimed to disable rather than destroy. Elena didn't want to kill more than necessary. This wasn't about revenge, though the temptation burned in her chest. This was about proving a point. Humanity was not extinct. Humanity was not weak. And humanity would not be ignored. After 2 hours of combat, the consortium fleet was in ruins. Over 100 ships floated dead in space, their crews evacuated or waiting for rescue. The Indomitable had taken damage, scorched armor and depleted shields, but nothing critical. It still hung in space like a predator that had just proven its dominance. Consortium Command is requesting a ceasefire, the communication officer reported. Granted, Elena said, but tell them I still want that audience. This time, when the consortium responded, the voice was different. No longer bureaucratic and dismissive, but careful, almost respectful. Commander Vasquez, the Council will see you. We request that you come to Threshold Station under a flag of truce. No, Elena replied. Your Council will come to my ship. You want to talk? You do it on human territory. And you'll watch every piece of footage we have from the colonies while you're here. You'll see what you did. There was a long pause. Then, agreed. 6 hours later, the Consortium Council sat in the Indomitable's conference room, surrounded by human guards and forced to watch centuries of their own crimes play out on screens. Elena sat at the head of the table, silent and cold as stone. When the footage finally ended, she spoke. You tried to erase humanity. You failed. We are here. We are alive. And we are not going away. You will recognize human sovereignty over our former territories. You will provide reparations to surviving human settlements. And you will publicly acknowledge what you did, so that history remembers your crimes. And if we refuse? One of the council members asked, though his voice lacked conviction. Elena, gestured to the viewport where the wreckage of the consortium fleet still floated. Then I'll visit every one of your major stations and repeat today's lesson until you learn it. I have 50 years of fuel and supplies. I have weapons your current technology cannot counter. And I have absolutely nothing to lose. She leaned forward, her eyes hard as diamonds. You gambled that humanity was dead. You lost. Now pay up. The council members looked at each other, their alien faces unreadable to Elena, but their body language universal. They were afraid, and fear made them reasonable. We will. Consider your terms, the lead council member finally said. You have 1 week, Elena replied. After that I start making more examples. As the consortium council was escorted back to their ships, Rodriguez appeared at Elena's side. That was incredible, Commander. We actually did it. Elena nodded, but she felt no triumph. Only exhaustion and the weight of what came next. The galaxy was watching now. Other powers would be making calculations, deciding whether to ally with humanity or try to eliminate them while they were weak. This was the easy part, she said quietly. Now comes the hard part. Now we have to figure out how to survive what we just started. The message from Threshold Station spread across the galaxy at the speed of light, carried by communication arrays and gossip alike. Humanity had returned and they had teeth. Within days, the political landscape of known space began to shift in ways not seen since the formation of the consortium itself. Elena watched the reports come in from the Indomitable's intelligence center, trying to make sense of the chaos they had unleashed. Some alien species saw opportunity in the consortium's embarrassment and began pushing for more autonomy. Others saw humanity as a threat that needed to be eliminated before it could grow stronger. A few surprisingly reached out with cautious offers of friendship. Commander, we're receiving a transmission from the Celtic Republic, the communication officer reported. They're requesting a meeting. Elena pulled up information on the Celtic. They were a younger species, only recently achieving faster-than-light travel. The consortium had been pressuring them to join, using economic leverage and subtle threats. The fact that they were reaching out to humanity suggested they saw an alternative. Schedule it, Elena said. But not here. Neutral territory. The meeting place was a dead system between Celtic and former human space. The Celtic delegation arrived in a small diplomatic vessel, clearly nervous about meeting the ship that had humbled the consortium. Their ambassador was a creature that looked like a cross between a mantis and a bird, with iridescent feathers and multiple eyes. Commander Vasquez, the ambassador said through the translator, my people watched your confrontation with the consortium. We have long suspected the truth about humanity's disappearance, but we lacked proof. Your broadcast gave us that proof. What do you want from us? Helena asked directly. Alliance protection. The consortium has been demanding we surrender our sovereignty or face economic isolation. But if humanity is returning to power, perhaps there are other options. Elena felt the weight of that request. The Celtic were offering to tie their fate to humanity's, betting that a species rising from near extinction could protect them better than the galaxy's current superpower. I can't make promises I can't keep, Elena said carefully. We have 1 ship and a few thousand survivors. The consortium has thousands of ships and billions of citizens. But you have something they don't, the ambassador replied. You have the moral authority of victims who refuse to die. You have technology they can't counter, and you have shown that resistance is possible. Over the following weeks, more species reached out. Not all wanted alliance. Some simply wanted to understand what humanity's return meant for them. Elena found herself becoming not just a military commander, but a diplomat, representing a species that barely existed anymore. Meanwhile, human survivors began emerging from hiding across the galaxy. Settlements that had lived in fear for generations suddenly had hope. The consortium, true to their word after Threshold, began pulling back patrols from former human territories. It wasn't justice, but it was survival. But Elena's thoughts kept returning to the faint signal Guardian 7 had detected from Sol system. Earth, their home world. The place where humanity had been born and where it had nearly died. The consortium had declared it forbidden territory, but they had never explained why. I want to go home, she told her senior staff during a private meeting. Before we do anything else, before we try to rebuild, I need to know what happened to Earth. Chen nodded slowly. The crew feels the same way. We're all displaced, living 300 years after our time. Earth is the only connection we have left to who we used to be. It could be dangerous, Rodriguez cautioned. The consortium said their ships disappeared in Sol system. Whatever drove them away might still be there. Then we'll be careful, Elena replied. But we're going. The journey to Sol took 3 weeks, following hyperspace routes that Elena remembered from her academy days. It was strange seeing familiar star patterns after so long, like returning to a childhood home only to find it changed beyond recognition. They dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the solar system, and Elena felt her heart clench. The outer planets looked the same. Massive Jupiter still dominated its orbit. Saturn's ring still caught the distant sunlight. But as they moved inward, the signs of catastrophe became clear. Mars showed evidence of failed terraforming, the atmospheric processors dark and silent. The asteroid belt had been heavily mined, with processing stations left abandoned. And then there was Earth. The planet that hung in the view screen was both familiar and alien. The continents were the same shapes Elena remembered, but the colors were different. Where there had been brown deserts, now there was green. Where there had been ice caps, now there was water. The planet looked healthier than it had in centuries, like a patient recovering from a long illness. Life signs? Elena asked, her voice tight with emotion. Positive, Guardian 7 replied. I'm reading approximately 800 million humans on the surface, most concentrated in traditional population centers, but at much lower density than historical records indicate. 800 million. It was a fraction of Earth's pre-collapse population, but it was far more than Elena had dared hope for. We're being hailed, the communication officer said. It's coming from multiple sources on the surface. They know we're here. Elena stood, smoothing her uniform with shaking hands. Put them through. The face that appeared on the screen was human, a young woman with dark skin and tired eyes. Behind her, Elena could see what looked like a command center, people working at stations that mixed advanced technology with improvised repairs. Indomitable, the woman said, her voice filled with wonder. We thought you were lost. We thought everyone who left during the expansion was dead. We were in cryosleep, Elena managed to say. We only woke up a few months ago. What happened here? What happened to Earth? The woman's expression turned sad. After you left, everything fell apart. Climate collapse, resource wars, nuclear exchange in some regions. We lost almost 90% of our population, but we survived. We pulled back from the edge, rebuilt slowly. It's been 300 years of learning to live within our means, of healing the damage we did. The consortium tried to invade, Elena said. Their records say something drove them away. That was us, the woman replied with grim satisfaction. When they came, we had nothing left to lose. We used weapons we'd sworn never to use again. We turned Earth's entire orbital space into a death trap, and we made it very clear that anyone who tried to conquer Earth would pay a price that wasn't worth the gain. Elena felt pride surge through her chest. Humanity had been broken, reduced to a fragment of what it once was, but it had never surrendered. We'd like to come down, Elena said. If you'll have us. We have a lot to tell you about what happened to the colonies. You're welcome home, Indomitable. All of you are welcome home. The landing took place at what had once been Kennedy Space Center, now rebuilt and expanded. As Elena walked down the ramp with her crew, she felt Earth's gravity for the first time in centuries. It was stronger than she remembered, pulling at her with insistent familiarity. Thousands of people had gathered to meet them, humans who had only heard legends of the great colony ships. They cheered as the crew emerged, a sound that Elena hadn't heard in so long she had forgotten how powerful it could be. In the days that followed, Elena met with Earth's leadership, a council that represented the various regions that had rebuilt. She told them everything: the colony network's destruction, the consortium's genocide, the survivors hiding in the dark corners of space. She played them the footage, and she watched as they wept for cousins they had never known. What do you need from us? The council leader asked. Everything, Elena admitted. Ships, resources, people. The consortium is weakened, but not broken. Other powers are watching to see what we do next. If humanity is going to survive, we need to rebuild our presence in space. It will take time, the leader said. We've spent 3 centuries rebuilding our home world. Expanding back into space will require resources and effort we're barely capable of. I know, Elena replied. But we don't have to do it tomorrow. We just have to start. The council agreed. Earth would begin building ships again, slowly at first, but with increasing capability. The Indomitable would serve as the flagship of humanity's return, but it wouldn't be alone forever. Elena stood on a balcony overlooking the Atlantic Ocean, watching the sun set over water that looked cleaner than she remembered. Rodriguez joined her, silent for a long moment. "Do you think we'll make it?" he asked. "Really make it, I mean. Build back what we lost?" Elena thought about the survivors hiding in asteroids, about the species reaching out for alliance, about Earth's slow recovery. She thought about the consortium's fear and the galaxy's uncertainty. Most of all, she thought about the 3,000 people on the Indomitable who had lost everything but refused to stop fighting. "We already have," she said quietly. "We survived extinction. Everything else is just details." Across the galaxy, on stations and ships and planets, beings watched Earth with new eyes. Humanity had returned from the edge of oblivion, and the cosmos was learning an old truth that it had forgotten. You could break humanity. You could scatter them across the stars and reduce their numbers to almost nothing, but you could never quite kill them. And anything that survived that kind of pressure came back harder than before. The age of humanity's fall was over. The age of their return was just beginning.